Hello and welcome to the FollowInTruth Bible Study. I'm your host LJ. In this video, I'm going to be offering a rebuttal to the opening statement of Anthony Rogers in his debate with Dale Tuggy on Does Mark Teach That Jesus is God? Now, I am only going to be dealing with the opening statements here. I will deal with the cross-examining and the rebuttals of Anthony Rogers in another video. Now, Anthony starts off his opening with the statement that Mark's gospel presents itself with the fulfillment of the new Exodus hope of the Old Testament. He then proceeds with a monologue revisiting the Old Testament Exodus in order to set up his argument. Now, this in of itself isn't an argument for the divinity of Jesus, but rather Anthony will use this to support his understanding that Jesus is the Lord Yahweh. What we will see a little later is that this actually is support for the Unitarian understanding and not actually for his own. Anthony asserts that in Mark 1:1, Mark uses the term Son of God as the true and proper Son of the Father, the Son by nature, and therefore the very coming of the Lord promised in the Old Testament. Now, it is this assertion that Anthony will call upon time and time again in his opening. Here we see Anthony's first appeal to the opening monologue. Jesus literally is the Lord who brought the Israelites out of Egypt and literally is Yahweh who would come. However, the term Son of God in no way means that by nature he is God. The term Son of God here, used by Mark, simply denotes the one who God himself had stated he would call God's Son, which is a fulfillment of God's own statement regarding the future Messiah in the Old Testament. 2 Samuel 7:14. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commit iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men and with the stripes of the children of men. This statement was made to David, referring to the future descendant of David, who God would call his son. This descendant is the Messiah, which Mark himself had just stated Jesus was in the exact same verse, Mark 1:1, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. So in actual fact, the term Son of God in Mark 1:1 is simply the confirmation that Jesus is the Messiah, or the Christ, the one who God stated he would call his son. The Son of God is the Messiah. Jesus is the one who is both the Messiah and the Son of God. To claim that the term Son of God refers to the nature of Jesus is to read into the term something that cannot be found declared within the Old Testament narrative, unlike Son of God referring to God's very own proclamation of what the relationship between God and his Messiah would be. Anthony then asserts that Mark immediately makes this clear by what he goes on to say in verses 2 and 3. By this, he is referring to his assertion of what Mark had meant by his usage of Son of God, which, as seen, Anthony understands to mean by nature God. Mark 1:2. As it is written in the prophets, Behold, I send my messenger before thy face, which shall prepare thy way before thee. 3. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, Prepare ye the way of the Lord, make his path straight. Anthony does correctly state that Mark 1:2 and 3 is a composite citation of Isaiah 43 and Malachi 3:1. But he then asserts that it is this that what Mark meant by Son of God. As the Son, really and truly, Jesus Christ is the Lord. Anthony had stated that Jesus was the very coming of the Lord, and therefore the very coming of the Lord promised in the Old Testament. Now, when we look at the two verses in the Old Testament, we do see that in Isaiah it is stated, Prepare the way of the Lord. Isaiah 43. The voice of him that crieth in the wilderness, Prepare ye the way of the Lord, which is Yahweh. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. And in Malachi 3:1, prepare the way before me. Malachi 3:1, behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me, and the Lord whom ye seek shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant, whom ye shall delight in. Behold, he shall come, saith the Lord of hosts. Anthony, like many other Trinitarians, assumes that in order for this to be fulfilled, it must be literal. The Lord, Yahweh, literally is the one coming. Now, it must be noted that the term Son of God cannot be found in either of these verses quoted by Mark in the Old Testament. Here, Anthony simply reads the belief that Mark is explaining the Son of God into the text without any scripture support beyond his preconceived understanding of the verses themselves, which is simply circular reasoning. As Anthony clearly understands the fulfillment of these verses to be literally the Lord, and so Jesus being the fulfillment of these prophecies must mean that Jesus is literally the Lord, Yahweh. And it is this belief that Anthony then reads back into the term Son of God in Mark 1:1, and then proceeds to interpret the rest of the gospel with this belief in mind. However, if we understand the Lord, Yahweh, coming to be fulfilled through the Messiah, who is in representation of the Lord and not literally the Lord, then we do not need to understand Mark's usage of Son of God in any other way than the biblically supported referent to the one who God would call his Son. As already demonstrated, that's what it means. It is a reference to the Christ. Anthony then goes on to correctly state that Mark presents the words as directly addressed to the Father, to the Son, but then he says, prior to the sending of John. Now, Mark 1:2, as it is written in the prophets, behold, I send my messenger before thy face, which shall prepare thy way before thee. Now, Mark does word this as God speaking to the Son. The use of thy and thee instead of me clearly indicates that Jesus is in replacement of the Lord Yahweh. The messenger, John the Baptist, was sent before Jesus to prepare the way before Jesus. Jesus most certainly is the way in which Yahweh would come. Now, this, in my understanding, is the agency of the Messiah, and not literally the Lord or Yahweh himself. I do have a detailed video and writing on the agency that is found in the Bible and the agency of the Messiah, and how God uses agency to act as him, and the things and the agents say and do things that are being attributed to God as if he was the one saying and doing them. And I would suggest going and having a look at that video or reading that writing on that. Furthermore, to claim, though, that this address took place in heaven prior to the sending of John, as Anthony does, is simply erroneous. Mark is not referring to an event that took place in heaven, where the Father spoke to the Son, but rather Mark specifically defines this as it is written. Mark simply attributes Jesus as the fulfillment of what was written. The address was actually recorded as prophecy by human prophets. Mark changes me, God, to thee, Jesus. So Mark clearly does believe that Jesus is the fulfillment of the prophecies where God refers to himself. But to believe that Mark is making a statement that Jesus is the Lord, or Yahweh, can only be done once it has already been incorrectly understood that Mark had already made the argument that Jesus was by nature the Son. Now, it presupposes that Mark himself believes that Jesus is Yahweh, and not simply the one through whom God fulfills the prophecies. But as I have already demonstrated, those presuppositions just do not hold up. If Mark, as I would assert, actually believed that God worked through people and beings, and that people and beings act as God in representation, then Mark's reasoning for changing me to thee would be that Jesus was the representation of God. So when the Messiah, who is God in representation, came, It was the fulfillment of God coming. Anthony then makes the argument that Jesus is the Son of God, the unique Son, different from all that came before him. Now, here I would most certainly agree that Jesus is the unique Son. What I most certainly do not agree with is that the assertion that his uniqueness necessitates Jesus being divine. Rather, I would argue that the uniqueness is in relation to his messiahship. It makes Jesus the Messiah that God had promised to call his Son. The uniqueness of the Son being that he was begotten by God and is the one who is the Messiah. No other man is this Messiah. No other man is, was, or will be this man, the Messiah. Anthony then claims that Christ's sonship entails the possession of transcendent authority over everyone and everything, as seen in his authority over the demons. Again, this is just simply incorrect. This is nothing more than the presupposition again. The Son's authority is not in any way transcendent, and neither is it ever asserted by Mark, or in fact anyone within the New Testament, that Jesus' authority is transcendent. In fact, it is explicitly stated elsewhere within the New Testament that the authority of Jesus was given to him as he himself explicitly declared, Matthew 28:18. And Jesus came and spake unto them, saying, All power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. Jesus had authority over all things, including demons, not because he was God, but because God exalted Jesus above all things, giving him the authority over all things. Philippians 2:9. Wherefore God also hath highly exalted him, and given him a name which is above every name. Now here in this verse, we don't have the Son being exalted by the Father, but rather by God. The belief that this refers to the Father person of the triune God, exalting the Son part of or person of God, has to be read into the verse. A straightforward reading simply has the Christ being exalted by God. Everything was put under Jesus, of course, except him that put all things under Jesus. 1 Corinthians 15:27. For he hath put all things under his feet. But when he saith, All things are put under him, it is manifest that he is accepted, which did put all things under him. Now we know that God put all things under Jesus, and so it is God himself who is exempted from being under Christ, not simply the Father. It was not Jesus that did the works that he did, but the Father that was in him working through Jesus that did the works. John 14:10. Believest thou not that I am in the Father, and the Father in me? The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. Here is a clear indication of the agency of the Messiah. God the Father worked through the agency of the Messiah, and so when the Messiah did the physical works, it was in fact the Father who is attributed as having done them. Something that is seen throughout the Bible. Jesus was given authority, and Jesus gave authority to the disciples to heal and cast out devils. Mark 3:14. And he ordained 12 that they should be with him, and that he might send them forth to preach and to have power to heal sickness and to cast out devils. Mark 6:13. And they cast out many devils, anointed with oil many that were sick, and healed them. Now, Mark even records that Jesus stated that believers, not just the disciples, but believers would also cast out devils. And these signs shall follow them that believe. In my name shall they cast out devils, they shall speak with new tongues. Therefore, the authority over devils, which Anthony argued demonstrated his transcendent authority, is also bestowed upon the disciples and believers. It, of course, would be incorrect to claim that this would mean that their authority was also transcendent, and neither does Anthony make this argument, which demonstrates the inconsistency of the argument itself. If you're going to claim that authority over demons proves the transcendent authority of Jesus, then to remain consistent with the argument, It should also prove the transcendent authority of the disciples and believers. And if it does not, then it doesn't prove the transcendent authority of Jesus without using the presupposed belief that it does. It must be noted that these devils did not call Jesus God, but rather they knew he was the Holy One of God. The devil that Jesus expelled in the synagogue did not state Jesus was God, but the Holy One of God, Mark 1:23. And there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, saying, Let us alone. What have we to do with thee, thou Jesus of Nazareth? Art thou come to destroy us? I know thee, thou art the Holy One of God. Now, one even referred to Jesus as the Son of the Most High God and appealed to Jesus to swear by God not to torture him, Mark 5:7, and cried with a loud voice and said, What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not. Now, he didn't appeal to Jesus as God to swear by himself as God. He appealed to Jesus through God to swear by God that he would not torture him. The devil clearly separated Jesus from God. Anthony then asserts that it was Jesus' claim to be the Son of God that the Sanhedrin in Mark 14 condemned as blasphemy, which he claims can only mean that they thought he was making a divine claim. This statement is found in Mark 14:64. Ye have heard the blasphemy. What think ye? And they all condemned him to be guilty of death. However, this assertion is yet again simply incorrect. They did not claim this blasphemy was an appeal to being divine. Rather, they accused Jesus of blasphemy when he gave an affirmation to their question, and the question that they asked of him, Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? Mark 14:61. But he held his peace and answered nothing. Again the high priest asked him and said unto him, Art thou the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? Now their question had no relation to divinity, but was aimed at Jesus being the Messiah. Now Jesus answered their question regarding his being the Messiah in the affirmative. Mark 14:62, and Jesus said, I am, and ye shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. Now, it was Jesus' yes answer to their question of was he the Christ that was deemed blasphemy. There simply is no claim by the Sanhedrin that Jesus had just made himself divine, but rather he had made himself the Christ. This again is demonstrated within Mark's own gospel with the recorded inscription above the cross that read, King of the Jews. Above the cross of Jesus read, King of the Jews. Now this is a term applied to the Messiah. Mark 15:26, and the superinscription of his accusation, here it's clearly stating the accusation that was written over him, the King of the Jews. The accusation is that he was claiming to be the King of the Jews, the Messiah. There is no accusation of Jesus being God or divine, but the mocking of the claim that Jesus was the Messiah, the one who would be the future King of the Jews promised to Israel through David. We even see that Mark records the chief priests mocking Jesus and referring to him as the Christ the King of Israel, Mark 15:31. Likewise, also the chief priests mocking said among themselves with the scribes, He saved others, himself he cannot save. Let Christ the King of Israel descend now from the cross, that we may see and believe. And they that were crucified with him reviled him. Again, there is no mocking of Jesus' supposed claim to divinity or being God, but against the claim of being the Christ, the King of Israel. If the chief priests or anyone had believed that Jesus had made divine claims, then why did they not make any statements of such at his trial or at his crucifixion? Anthony then makes three statements, and I will deal with them only on a basic level, as they each would require their own full explanation, which I just don't have time to do within this video, so I'll deal with them in a quick response to them. Anthony claimed, or stated, Jesus claimed to be the Lord of the Sabbath, a divine institution. The correct understanding of this is actually stated by Jesus himself. Mark 2:27. And he said unto them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath. As the Sabbath was made for man, Jesus being the Messiah and having authority over all creation, he is also the Lord over the Sabbath. The Sabbath is part of creation. And so he is Lord over the Sabbath that was created for man. Jesus, as the Lord, claimed ownership over the property of others. And this is the second claim of Anthony Rogers, Mark 11:3. And if any man say unto you, why do ye this? Say ye that the Lord hath need of him, and straightway he will send him hither. This is not Jesus claiming that he had ownership over other people's property, but that Jesus was simply asserting that the owner of the donkey would allow the Lord, Jesus, the Messiah, to use the donkey if the owner knew that it was the Messiah that required the use of the donkey. He is just simply stating something that the owner of the donkey would say and would allow Jesus to use the donkey, knowing that it was for the Messiah. He wasn't saying that just take the donkey because I own this donkey. That is a false assertion. Jesus claimed to be the very Lord of Psalm 110, and so claimed to be greater than David or any mere son of David. And this is the third claim by Anthony. Jesus most certainly did claim to be the Lord of David, not the Lord as in Yahweh. The Messiah is the Lord of David, as he is the Lord over all, having been made Lord over all. And seeing that he is made Lord over all, it must include David. Acts 2:36. Therefore let all the house of Israel know, let all the house of Israel know, assuredly that God hath made that same Jesus, whom ye crucified, both Lord and Christ. Now, the Lord here cannot refer to Yahweh, or otherwise we have a problem that God has made Jesus Yahweh. And this understanding would simply fail. Jesus is not just a mere son of David, but the specific son of David that God had promised David would sit upon the throne of David forever. The most important thing to notice in the verse in Acts is that it is stated that God had made Jesus Lord and Christ. It does not say the Father had made Jesus the Christ. Trinitarians simply read the Father person of the God into the verse here. Then Anthony starts his claim regarding the Exodus and how Jesus reenacts the Exodus of the Old Testament, which Anthony will use to support the claim he made at the start of his argument. Jesus does the things that the Lord Yahweh did during the Exodus, and so demonstrates that Jesus is the Lord. Anthony asserts that Jesus rebuked the wind and the sea just as the Lord Yahweh did in Exodus, Mark 4:39. And he arose and rebuked the wind and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. However, when we go back to when God parted the sea in Exodus, we will see that God commanded Moses to part the sea. Exodus 14:16. But lift thou up thy rod, and stretch out thine hand over the sea, and divide it. And the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. Now, while it, of course, was God who parted the sea, it was through the man Moses that he carried this act out. This does not make Moses God, but simply the man, the agent, through whom God acted. Yahweh acted through the agency of Moses, And so while Moses did indeed part the sea and is recorded as doing so, of course, it is Yahweh who is the ultimate force behind this act. Moses parted the sea through the authority that God had given him to do so. Now, Jesus rebuked the wind and stilled the sea through the authority that he was given by God. As we've already seen, it was the Father in Jesus that did the works and not Jesus himself. Anthony then refers to the casting of the demons into the pigs who were drowned by the sea and claims this is just like the Lord Yahweh drowning Pharaoh and his legion in the sea. Mark 5:13, and forthwith Jesus gave them leave, and the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the sea. They were about 2,000 and were choked in the sea. But yet again, this is simply incorrect. Jesus, just as God had given Moses the authority to part the sea, he gave Moses the authority to close the sea over again and drown the Egyptian army. Exodus 14:26. And the Lord Yahweh said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand over the sea, and the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. God worked through Jesus just as he did through Moses. Now, Mark 6, with Jesus miraculously feeding a multitude of Israelites in the wilderness, is also used to support the claim of this Exodus. Mark 6:41. And when he had taken the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, he looked up to heaven and blessed and brake the loaves and gave them to his disciples to set before them. And the 2 fishes divided he among them all. Now, Jesus looks to heaven for the actualization of the miracle. Anthony states Mark 4, 5, and 6 record Jesus doing signature acts of the Lord, Yahweh, things that only Yahweh alone can do and did do. Mark records Jesus doing them in the exact order in which the Lord did them, and he also uses the precise Old Testament language to describe these things. But as shown, God's actions were actualized through Moses. The acts of Jesus, which followed the acts of the Exodus, were not done to demonstrate that Jesus was God or was Yahweh, but rather to identify him as the prophet like Moses that God had promised to raise up in Deuteronomy 18:18. I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto thee, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. Now, Anthony's assertion that this affirms that Jesus is in actuality Yahweh, in fact demonstrates that just as God was seen acting through Moses, he acted through Jesus. Anthony fails to apply the agency of Moses within the Exodus story to the new Exodus, as detailed in Mark, and so misrepresents how the Lord Yahweh acted in the Old Testament. Exodus simply attributing it to the Lord, and so by removing the agency, can then assert that Jesus acted out the events of the Exodus, and as this was the Lord in the Old Testament, then Jesus is the Lord in the New Testament. Anyone who is honest enough to acknowledge the agency of Moses, who God used to perform the acts attributed to him, cannot fail to notice this, especially in light of the prophecy of the prophet who would be like Moses. Mark records Jesus calling himself a prophet when he was rejected in Nazareth. Mark 6:31. Mark 6:3, sorry. Is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James and Joseph, and of Judah and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us? And they were offended at him. But Jesus said unto them, A prophet is not without honor, but in his own country, and among his own kin, and in his own house. Now, Anthony's next assertion refers to Mark 6, where Jesus does the acts of the Exodus again, which Anthony claims is more confirmation that Jesus is God, and this follows through in Mark 6, 7, and 8. Now, it would not matter how many times Jesus performed these acts, it would not make Jesus anything other than the prophet, and all that this does is confirm that Jesus is that prophet that is like Moses. Anthony even makes an assertion to eimi, which Trinitarians love to use as proof of the deity of Jesus. Now, this can be found in verse 50 of chapter 6. For they all saw him, and were troubled, and immediately he talked with them, and saith unto them, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. Now, eimi is not a reference to God, and I have another video that in detail explains how eimi is used in the New Testament and how many people actually use this. It is not a reference to God, and I won't go into this too much. It is just suffice to state that many people use eimi in the Bible without implications of divinity, and Trinitarians asserting that these people are claiming to be God, they don't do it. It's another example of inconsistent argumentation. Eimi is not a divine term, but rather a simple reference to oneself. Anthony then refers to Mark 9, where Jesus led the 3 disciples up the mountain for God to announce, This is my son, listen to him. Now, he asserts that this is the exact same thing that the Lord told Moses in Exodus 23 with respect to that theophanic person who bears his very name. And I have a long, detailed writing, again, on the spiritual meaning behind the Transfiguration, which you can read on my blog, and I also have a video of it as well. To specifically understand the statement, listen to him, we simply need to look again at Deuteronomy 18:18. I will raise them up a prophet, which Jesus is, and Jesus declared himself as a prophet, from among their brethren, like unto thee, like unto Moses, and all the Exodus would prove is that Jesus was being likened to Moses, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. As we can see, God stated that he would put his words in the mouth of this prophet, that he would raise up, and he would be like Moses. He, the prophet, would speak all that God commanded him to speak. Now, God stated that he will hold accountable anyone that does not listen to that prophet. Deuteronomy 18:19, and it shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words, which he shall speak, my words that he shall speak in my name, I will require of him. So it is vitally important that we notice that God states, whoever will not hearken to my words, God's word, which the prophet shall speak. So when the prophet is speaking, he is speaking the words of God, which is what Jesus actually stated in John 12:49. For I have not spoken of myself, but the Father which sent me, he gave me a commandment, what I should say and what I should speak. Jesus was given commandment of what to speak, just as God had stated of the prophet in Deuteronomy. So the importance of listening to Jesus is not because he is God, but because he would speak the words of God, and that God would hold anyone accountable that didn't listen to the prophet. Then Anthony states, the words of the prologue, especially verses 1 through 3, are programmatic for the rest of the gospel. Mark announced already at the beginning who Jesus is and what he came to do. He is the divine Son of God and Lord Yahweh who came to effect a new Exodus. Now, as already demonstrated, this is Anthony reading this preconceived understanding into the prologue and then reading the gospel within this preconceived understanding. Now, I will agree that verses 1 through 3 of chapter 1 are programmatic, but I would argue that the gospel's programmatic prologue actually simply argues that Jesus is the Christ, the one who would be called the Son of God. Now, Anthony then claims that people at every turn either objecting to what Jesus does, since it involves the exercise of exclusive divine prerogative, or presupposes the possessions of incommunicable divine attributes, forgiving sin, knowing the hearts of men, performing a divine work on the Sabbath. The reader has already been told what the people in the narrative do not yet have eyes to see. This again is nothing more than Anthony asserting his presupposition. Jesus Christ, together with his Father, is Lord, the one Lord of Israel, which again is simply a presuppositional statement. Anthony states, the question on everyone's lips is, who is this? Yet not one person asks, is this man God? Mark 6:14. And King Herod heard of him, for his name was spread abroad, and he said that John the Baptist was risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do shew themselves in him. Others said that it is Elias, and others said that it is a prophet, or as one of the prophets. Now, just before Peter's confession to Jesus that he believed Jesus to be the Christ, Jesus asked him who people were saying he was. Peter answered, John the Baptist, Elias, or one of the prophets. Mark 8:27. Jesus went out and his disciples into the towns of Caesarea Philippi, and by the way he asked his disciples, saying unto them, who do men say that I am? And they answered, John the Baptist, but some say Elias, and others one of the prophets. Well, they may well have asked, who is Jesus? Who was Jesus? Jesus being God was not one of the answers that was proposed by anyone that was asking the question. Anthony then refers to Mark 2, where Jesus heals a paralytic man, declaring his sins were forgiven. Mark 2:5. When Jesus saw their faith, he said unto the sick of the palsy, Son, thy sins be forgiven thee. Now, Anthony affirms the question asked, who can forgive sins but one God? Anthony then asserts that Mark's answer to this question by stating, Mark's answer in the prologue, this is the Lord, Yahweh. Now here we clearly see Anthony using the preconceived understanding of the prologue to interpret the answer to the question. However, this is false. The answer isn't because Jesus is the Lord Yahweh. The statement, who can forgive sins but one, God, is completely misunderstood by Anthony. The Jews did not believe that a man couldn't forgive sins. They knew that men could forgive sins. The Levitical priests forgave sins and were specifically ordained by God to do so. It was clearly written in their own law. It was fully understood that God is the one that forgave the sin, but it was through the priest that he did so. But it was this fact, that God had specifically given the authority to these men, the Levitical priests, to forgive sins, that is the whole point here. By what authority did this man, Jesus, forgive sins? He wasn't a Levitical priest. Now, only God could forgive sins, and he forgave through the Levitical priests. It was then their understanding that this man, not being a priest, did not have the authority to forgive sins, as he did not have the authority of God to do so. And we see that this is the question that was asked of Jesus in Anthony's next verse that he uses in support for his position, Mark 11:28. And say unto him, by what authority dost thou these things? And he gave thee, who gave thee this authority to do these things? Anthony states, by what authority are you doing these things? In other words, who do you think you are? And why should we listen to you? Anthony claims Mark's answer is found in the prologue. Mark's answer is in the prologue, he is the Lord Yahweh. Anthony believes that the authority Jesus had was not because God gave him the authority, as the New Testament clearly attests to, but because Jesus is God himself. In the very first chapter, we see that Mark records that Jesus taught in the synagogues as one who had authority, Mark 1:22. And they were astonished at his doctrine, for he taught them as one that had authority, and not as one of the scribes. The Pharisees had wanted a sign from heaven, or from God, that he had the authority to do as he was doing. Mark 8:11. And the Pharisees came forth and began to question with him, seeking of him a sign from heaven, tempting him. Now, if we look just a few verses later in chapter 11, after Jesus had been asked by what authority he did these things, we see that Jesus actually argued where his authority had come from. Mark 11:30, the baptism of John, was it from heaven or of men? Answer me. Now, they couldn't answer Jesus because they either would contradict themselves or they would anger the crowd. 11:31, and they reasoned with themselves, saying, if we shall say from heaven, as in the authority it was given by God, he will say, why then did you not believe him? But if we shall say of men, they feared the people, for all men counted John that he was a prophet indeed. Jesus here was asserting that the authority of John the Baptist was given by God. If John the Baptist was not a priest, but his authority to baptize people for the remission of sins was in fact God-given, but this didn't make John God, then there simply is no reason to assert that Jesus having the authority to forgive sins was because he was God. He had the authority to forgive sins because it was given to him by God, just as John the Baptist's authority had been given by God from heaven. The argument is simply again inconsistent. Anthony further argues it's because these scribes, these PhDs, only recognize that Jesus is a man, that they thought Jesus was blaspheming by doing and saying what could only be said and done by one God. Yet another false claim. Jesus wasn't doing and saying what could only be done and said by God. He was doing and saying what could only be done by one who had the authority of God to say and do. The scribes, these PhDs, only recognized Jesus as a man and not the Messiah that they thought Jesus was blaspheming, saying he was. He, being an unauthorized man, could not say or do these things. Men could do what Jesus did. Levites forgave sins. Prophets healed. They healed people and even raised people from the dead, as Jesus did. Yet they all had been given authority to do so. As the scribes, these PhDs did not believe that Jesus was the Messiah. They did not believe that he had the authority given by God to do the things that he did. Now, Mark even records the scribes, these PhDs, as claiming that Jesus did what he did through the power of Beelzebub, Mark 3:22. And the scribes which came down from Jerusalem said, he hath Beelzebub, and by the prince of the devils casteth he out devils. So even these scribes, these PhDs, didn't believe that only God could cast out a devil. They clearly believed that the power of Beelzebub could do such things. Their argument wasn't that he wasn't God, and so he couldn't do the works that he did, but rather being just a man and not the Messiah, he didn't have the authority from God to do them. Anthony states the leaders of that time did not understand, or otherwise they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. Yet the argument in Acts would seem to suggest that they crucified the Christ, who God had made both Lord and Christ, not Yahweh. Acts 2:36, therefore let all the house of Israel know assuredly that God hath made that same Jesus, who you have crucified, both Lord and Christ. And again, this Lord cannot be Yahweh, or otherwise God made Jesus Yahweh. Anthony then states that this is the Lord of the Exodus returned to his people. And I wouldn't disagree. I would simply argue how this is actualized. This not being literally as in Jesus being literally God, but through the agency of him being the Messiah. Anthony then refers to a number of verses, Mark 1:27, and they were all amazed, insomuch that they questioned among themselves, saying, what thing is this? What new doctrine is this? For with authority commandeth he even the unclean spirits, and they do obey him. Mark 6:2, and when the Sabbath day was come, he began to teach in the synagogue. And many hearing him were astonished, saying, from whence hath this man these things? What wisdom is this which is given unto him, that even such mighty works are wrought by his hands? Where did this man get these things? And what is this wisdom that he has been given? We have Mark 37, and we're beyond measure astonished, saying, he hath done all things well. He maketh both the deaf to hear and the dumb to speak. Now, Anthony asks the question, why is everyone amazed and dumbfounded? This question Anthony answers himself. Because they think he's only a man. And here I would fully agree that they did see Jesus as just a man. However, as already demonstrated, this wasn't in contrast to him being God, but as the Messiah. They viewed Jesus as just a man who was not also the Messiah. Anthony asserts that Mark describes them as deaf and dumb and blind, and states the plot is even seen in the case of the disciples to only arrive at a partial understanding prior to the cross and resurrection. Well, the conclusion that the disciples came to before the cross was that Jesus was in fact the Messiah, as Mark records, Mark 8:29. And he saith unto them, but whom say ye that I am? And Peter answereth and saith unto him, thou art the Christ. And he charged them that they should tell no man of him. Jesus affirmed the confession of Peter that Jesus was the Christ, and Jesus never asks them again who they think he is, and never offers a more full or concise answer that he is in fact God. Anthony then states in Mark 4, after Jesus rebuked the wind and the sea, the fearful response of the disciples was, who then is this? Which Anthony again believes Mark answers in his prologue. Mark's answer in the prologue, this is the Lord, Yahweh. Like the other times that he asserts this, he is simply asserting his presupposition. Now, it is my assertion that, as already stated, that Mark's answer in the prologue was the same as Peter's in Mark 8, that Jesus was the Christ. He could still the waters through his authority that was given to him by God as the Christ. Anthony then asserts that it is the divine identity of Christ that is the thesis of Mark's gospel, and the failure and the need to recognize it is the plot. Again, this is nothing more than a presuppositional assertion. The thesis of Mark's gospel consistently is that Jesus is the Messiah. Anthony claims over and over again we are told that the people recognize Jesus as a man, and in some cases even as the prophet and the Christ, but not as the divine Son of God and Lord Yahweh, because their eyes were closed. Pure conjecture. Where is it written that Jesus is the divine Son, but that they did not recognize Jesus as the divine Son because their eyes were closed? This is Anthony asserting his own preconceived belief into what we are told and what we are not told. Not even once do we have any reference to them not recognizing Jesus as the divine Son of God. Anthony then asserts that one of the debaters stands on the side of the narrator, telling you that Jesus is the Lord. Of course, Anthony is referring to himself as that debater, asserting that his understanding is the one that Mark had. He then asserts that the other, Dale Tuggy, is asserting that Jesus is only a man or at best a son of David. This is a straw man argument. Unitarians do not claim this. While Dr. Tuggy does assert, and as the Unitarians do assert, and myself included, that Jesus was a man, we assert that Jesus was the Messiah. And so while a man, he is not only a man, he is a man anointed by God as his Messiah, and so stands in full authority over God's creation, having been given this authority by God, an exalted man. So while Unitarians do claim that Jesus is just a man by nature, it is incorrect and rather disingenuous to claim that Unitarians claim Jesus is just a mere man. This point is in need of clarification. When Anthony refers to Unitarians believing Jesus is just a man, he should rather clarify that to those that listen to his arguments, that we would only assert Jesus as a man if we were referring to his nature and not who he is. Simply stating that Unitarians assert Jesus is a man without clarifying what is it we are claiming or being claimed by Unitarians, I feel is a deliberate attempt to give listeners a false understanding of the beliefs of Unitarians. Jesus is a man. He is also the Messiah of God. Now, Anthony finishes his opening with the question, don't you see? Mark's gospel demonstrates that he was a man of war, the Lord Jehovah, Exodus 3, Isaiah 42:13. Nowhere does Mark refer to Jesus as a man of war. Again, this is simply asserting the presupposition that Anthony has asserted throughout the entirety of his opening. By asserting that Jesus is God, Anthony himself presents Jesus as the Lord, who is called the man of war. Anthony reads this into Mark rather than Mark's gospel demonstrating it. Thank you very much for listening. I know that it was quite a long couple of videos. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It really does mean a lot to me and it does help my channel. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Again, it does help. If you didn't like, please leave a comment. Show me where I'm wrong. I'm more than happy to engage in any conversation with anyone regarding their beliefs on what I've said and obviously the Jesus being the Messiah and Jesus being God. I look forward to seeing you on my next video. I will be doing another video, as I've stated, on the comments of the rebuttals of Anthony and the dialogue that Anthony and Dale had, and also maybe some of the comments that or the questions that were brought up in that dialogue and by listeners. Again, thank you very much for listening, and I will see you on my next video.